Okay, so first I'm going to make a very bold statement, and then I'm going to defend it, and then later you guys can ask questions as well. But I believe that there's a market for about 150 million of these cars right now. Not that that market could be achieved immediately, but that's how many people would be driving these if they were cheap enough to drive. And the reasons are many, but the most basic one is just what do people do with their cars. I once heard that if you're going to innovate something, don't give people what they want, watch what they do. I've been watching what they do for over 25 years, and it makes me crazy. They sit in traffic jams for many, many hours. There's actually $67 billion per year wasted because of lack of productivity because of traffic jams throughout the country. It also wastes about 5 billion barrels of oil, which is enough to fill gasoline tank trucks from New York City to Las Vegas and all the way back. That's just the waste due to traffic. If everything were free-flowing, that's how much would be saved. So there are 118 million people that work in the U.S., and of them, 92 million drive by themselves in a car. Public transportation is only about 6%. There's a couple percent walk and so forth, but 92 million people drive by themselves to work every day, an average of only 20 miles. Now, lead-acid batteries can go 3 to 4 times that amount, and they're pretty cheap. And the cost per mile with lead-acid batteries for that average commute is only about a penny a mile. Here in the Bay Area, I think with PG&E, I think it's maybe a penny and a half a mile, but it's still very, very reasonable compared to the price of gasoline, which is well over 10 cents a mile. So battery replacement and electricity is not an issue, but I don't think people will buy the car because it's electric. I mean, some people will, of course, but in England, people are paying $6.75 a gallon and still commuting 50 miles to work. So there's something about the convenience of having a car that seems to overwhelm everything else. So this is the first car, to my knowledge, that can fit 2 in a lane. It actually fits in half a lane with more clearance than a truck has in a full lane. A standard freeway lane is 12 feet wide. A truck is allowed to be 9 foot 4 inches from mirror to mirror. That means they only have 16 inches of clearance on either side. To take a 6-foot lane, if you put a stripe in a lane and said we want to double the capacity of the freeway, or at least a lane on the freeway, you would have a lane 6 feet wide. You'd have 16 inches of clearance. Would give you a 40-inch width for a car. Our car is 39 inches wide. It's just under a meter. So it does fit side by side in the lane, as you're seeing in the video here. We've driven for 40 miles side by side with these 2 cars, and quite comfortably. I've also driven side by side with motorcycles, and they also felt comfortable. In reality, cars don't generally like to be side by side, though. They can stagger, but that doesn't mean you're not doubling the capacity, because if they're staggered a little bit so you're not side by side, it's much easier. Trucks, when they're on the freeway, they are side by side because they're 70 feet long or so. They're side by side with that small clearance for very long periods of time, which is rather nerve-wracking. But in this car, you can see your mirrors out of the corners of your eye, and you know where you are in the lane. So it's really not nerve-wracking at all. You could drive in a 6-foot lane 70 miles an hour all day long and not even think about it. So anyway, I think that, it's the future. Any crowded city needs us desperately, and we're just starting slow and carefully, building a good foundation. We had 2 choices when we started this company. One was to build the car as cheap as we could, and that would probably be a $60,000 car. And the other choice was to build a really high-end car. And our target price was $85,000, but unfortunately the price has crept up. But the thing is that a car in low production just costs a lot to build, and there's nothing you can do about that. And if we'd gone the cheaper option, the people who wanted an electric car like this couldn't afford it, and the people that could afford it wouldn't want it. So we tried to make it appeal to those who could afford it, and luckily we got a check from George Clooney one day in the mail for 10 grand as a deposit, and he started asking, where's my car, and we delivered it. So that's our first delivery last year. York Brown has an order for one. We have another customer in Berkeley. We're building their cars right now. It's going to be about a 6-month process to build these cars, and they keep getting more and more refined. We've made some major improvements. We're going with an all stainless steel chassis. It has a full NASCAR roll cage made of chrome moly. It has 4 times more steel in the door than than a Volvo or any other car. Even the Ford Excursion has one bar in the door for protection, and it's not really attached to anything substantial other than the sheet metal. Whereas ours, we have special designed hinges that are as strong as the rest of the roll cage and tie those 4 bars into the rest of the roll cage with pins and with specially designed hinges. So we've built, a car that we believe is, the safest, the fastest, and so forth. I have another video that'll kind of answer a lot of questions. Let me play that. Oh, there we go.
Is it a new sports car about to hit the streets? The sculptured lights, the sporty wheels, a racing car cockpit, and power to burn. Whoa, wait a minute, what's this? It's the Tango, the commuter car of the 21st century. Man, it's got tons of power, it feels incredibly stable, and it just goes. I mean, and it's fun to drive.
This particular autocross, this is the Monterey Historic Car Races weekend, and the Concours Italiano invited us there. My son had only driven one autocross before, and he was only 3 seconds behind an experienced Ferrari driver in his 308. You can see some cars, it looks like. And we were going around the corner a lot quicker than that. That's the Dallas 2,000 pounds under the floor.
A new national study on traffic jams suggests the problem is bad and getting worse. It found the average American driver spends at least 51 hours a year caught in congestion. But now, an inventor in Washington State has come up with an amazing way to cut traffic in half. It's the mini car. Early Show National correspondent Hattie Kaufman has more.
Imagine if you could fit twice as many cars onto the freeway, twice as many cars into each lane. Well, you could if everyone drove a skinny car.
And on the street, when every parking spot is full, well, just squeeze in between them.
It's definitely a head turner.
How fast?
130 miles an hour, 0 to 60 in 4 seconds.
You're kidding me!
Just think of the parking spots you could get, the traffic you'd avoid. The Tango may revolutionize the road.
I think this is the biggest revolution since the Model T in transportation.
You had to think outside the box. For the Early Show, Hattie Kaufman, CBS News, Spokane, Washington.
As fun as it is to watch the car, it's almost as fun to watch people watch the car.
It's cute.
Outrageous.
This is great. How do I look?
Because if they don't come up and say, wow, they certainly think, wow, and want to see what they look like in what could be the world's fastest, funkiest electric car.
Wow, it's really spacious inside here.
Yeah.
What about crashworthiness?
Crashworthiness is better than any production car that I know of. It's got a NASCAR roll cage.
And why use gas when you can go electric? You can juice up a Tango in as little as 10 minutes.
The facts that make electric work in this case are, one, that the average commute's only 20 miles, and this will go 4 times that, 80 miles.
So they painted it Ferrari red.
I think that's great.
Couldn't forget the cup holder.
Yeah, it does get a lot of excitement.
So the guy who drives this car, chick magnet.
Yeah,
Excellent. So you get sports car enthusiasts who probably turn up their nose and go, this golf cart cannot beat me.
I'd love to meet him at a stoplight.
0 to 60, how fast?
In 4 seconds.
Sweet.
Okay, so it would be zero emissions if it weren't for the tire smoke. Actually, we set the torque so it doesn't spin the tires. You can just adjust the torque infinitely. You can adjust the horsepower. We have a valet mode, so if you don't want people driving at over a certain speed, you can set it up as you wish. So. Okay, so this, I'll just go through this presentation quickly and skip a lot of slides because it's really designed for an investor presentation. To help to get it back to the beginning somehow. So we have one of our investors, a surgeon from Harvard Medical School, and he's a medical device analyst now, so he put together this presentation for us, and it's really just targeting certain angel investors. We're trying to break it away from the automotive market because the automobile market is not investment worthy according to most people. You know, they say that it's too capital intensive, you can't make a quick enough profit, etc. So we're trying to show that this really isn't like the automotive market any more than the PC was part of the main computer market. It's really a different market. It's going a different place. And when people think of this as an automobile, it's kind of like me. I think back in '75 when friends of mine were getting into the PC business, I said, what are you going to do with this stupid thing? Balance your checkbook? You know, I thought, what a waste. And so look now. And so I can't be too hard on the people that don't think this has a future. They just don't get it. They will. So anyway, So we have a deep-seated consumer dislike, 50 minutes a day in gridlock traffic. They hate it. We can fix that. And this is the only person that's not frustrated, but he's taking a little bit of risk, which most people won't take. Only 1% of the commuting traffic use a combination of bicycles and motorcycles together, so it is a very small percentage right now. And I think the main reason is safety. The other is weather. We solve both of those problems. So lane splitting is legal according to California Highway Patrol webpage. Motorcycles can lane split as long as it's done safely. It's only legal here in California, possibly Nevada and Arizona, and basically all the rest of the world. It's absolutely the way to get around in Taipei, for example, but all over England and Europe and the Orient, lane splitting is perfectly okay. And this car is 5 inches narrower than a Goldwing. So it actually lane splits a lot easier and obviously a lot safer than others. So I don't think there'll be a lot of resistance. Government, policymakers are very interested in saving money on freeway construction. So I think we're seeing a lot of positive from both the state and the federal government level as far as this being a really good alternative and something that they want to push forward. So I think, I had a situation where I was coming off the Bay Bridge going toward Berkeley, and it took me 20 minutes to get from where I was to the overpass up ahead, and I was counting the time, timing the motorcycles. It was 20 seconds. It's a 60-to-1 advantage, and I'm sure a lot of people would have loved to have that. And if I looked around me, I'd find that 90% of the people had only one person in each car. So these are basic specifications, 0 to 60 in 4 seconds, to be able to drive comfortably in a 70 miles an hour in a 6-foot-half freeway lane. It's the only car in the world that can really do that. The next competitor is about 48 inches wide or more. I think that people seeing a small car think it's a death trap immediately, so we have to prove to them that not only is it not any less strength than a regular car, but it's way beyond that. It has 4 times more steel in the doors. It has a full race car roll cage. These cars are crashed routinely. People ask if our car's been crash tested. Every weekend by NASCAR, 200 miles an hour. They crash, tumble, T-bone each other, and the guys walk out almost always. So there's really a lot to be said for that. The drag strip, we managed to beat a Shelby Cobra. That was kind of exciting. You're able to keep a lot closer proximity to the car in front of you as well, because you always know you have an escape route. You can be over near the line, and you just have a comfort zone that I can't explain. You can only feel it by driving it, because you just know where you can go, and whatever happens, you're able to avoid collisions much easier than you could in a car. So parking's kind of neat. I've been down in LA. I was driving George Clooney's car in Los Angeles, and I pulled into a parking lot that was completely full, and I saw 2 Hummers going around and around. And I just pulled into this little triangular spot, just like one of these here, and just I'm in and out. San Francisco, Cole Street Hardware. I went down there. There were people circling around looking for a place to park, and I was in and out, and the same people are still going around looking. on Geary Boulevard, as you go out Geary, you know, a lot of there's just parking in the residential area. There's really no other parking, so people are going up and down the residential streets. Well, with this car, you pull around the corner, and there's a 4-foot space between every single home in the entire San Francisco avenues, and you just pull into the first one, park perpendicular, you're done. It's very convenient. So even though it may not be the best configuration for dating because your date would have to be behind you, it will fit 2 6'6" people. But you know, after a couple gets to know each other really well and they can handle being that separated by a seat, you know, then maybe they'll take this because it's so much quicker and they can get on about their business. High school girls said, "Nah, I think I'd rather be side by side with my boyfriend," you know. So anyway, we have 4 wheels. That requires it being sold as a kit car until we raise, you know, some $50 million or so and do a full FMVSS certification. It's extremely expensive to enter the car business with a fully certified car. They require airbags. They require passing crash tests. Without airbag or without seat belts, the airbags have to do all the work. So quite a bit of engineering involved. It's really to protect the car companies more than anything else, I think. It's like if you meet these specs and you can't get sued for a safety item, I think that's probably what's behind the very complex rules, because they're really not nearly as safe as a typical race car, but yet safety isn't really the top priority. I think I went over this. Gas prices will drive it, but I'm not counting on it. So, you know, our cost of goods sold right now is about $85,000. You know, we're working on that. I think, you know, we'll come out with other models in the future that'll be less expensive, but we're going to have to sell a bunch of these for $108,000 in order to get the cost down. It just takes a lot of tooling to reduce costs. So, one step at a time. We do have kind of an incentive if people try to sell.
You're running late on time. I'm going to switch over some questions.
Oh, sure. Yeah, let me do that. Okay, so I can take questions now. Yes?
A couple of months ago, I was in an automobile accident. I was driving a rental car and was hit by an SUV. My rental car was totaled. Everyone in the car was either injured or killed. There was some minor bumper damage on the SUV. And I don't think that's because of, you know, how much metal I had around me. It's just the weight difference.
Right.
What does this thing weigh?
It weighs 3,000 pounds. It weighs as much as a mid-sized sedan, so you have that in your favor. And to ward off SUVs, you actually have bars that are up right at the top of the door. This there's a bar that goes all the way up through here, and then there's another one down here, another one through here, and there's vertical bars through here. So no matter where you get hit, you have a lot more protection. Obviously, if you get hit hard by an SUV in the door, there's not any car that's going to protect you from your head hitting the grill. So a side airbag, and we're planning on that in the future, having actually this, we have a 4-point shoulder harness in there, so those belts can actually be airbags. BF Goodrich has designed an airbag belt that would work quite nicely to protect you in a side impact. But you're definitely better off not having the car going through your car. I saw a Cadillac at the evidence yard up in Spokane, and the driver's door was touching the passenger door. Somebody had driven right through the car. So you can talk about crumple zone all you want, but I'd say integrity is the first thing. Race cars have to have that. They talk very little about crumple zone. Crumple zone is really nice for marketing. It's cheap. It's easy to convince people of, but that's not really the point of safety. Safety is keeping you alive in a crash, which is what race cars have to do. Yes?
What maintenance is involved in all of the costs?
It's extremely low maintenance. You have brakes and tires, obviously. The brushes on the motors are good for about 100,000 miles or so. So they're about $25 every 100,000 miles. So maintenance is almost nil except for batteries. And batteries you kind of choose based on what your driving style is. According to Optima Yellow Top's cycle life chart, they say that they'll go about 80,000 miles if you drive it to 30% dead each time. So that would be about 3 cents a mile, extremely inexpensive. The hawkers that we have in here aren't so bold with their claims. They say that they'll get twice as many miles if you empty them completely. In other words, 400 cycles instead of 200. So that would give you, you know, every few years or every, say, 50,000 miles or so, you'd have to replace batteries that would cost about $2,200. But the cost per mile, I think, is the key thing. And we have that on our webpage. We have whole charts that work that out and compare it with the Honda Insight and other cars like that. Yes?
What kind of drivetrain is it, and does it have regenerative braking?
It doesn't have regenerative braking. Regen is most easily done with AC, and we love to have an AC drive system in there, but it's even much more expensive than what we have. We use the highest torque motors, the same kind used in freight trains, so we have actually over 1,000 foot-pounds of torque and 0 RPM, and our controller is actually 600 kilowatts, which translates to about 805 horsepower. So no AC drive would have that. We'd still, you know, we'd rather have regen, but doing it with traction motors or with series wound motors is very complicated, and I think that the failures would be higher, so keep it simple right now. Yes?
Can your batteries be recycled?
Yes, absolutely. It must be. In fact, we're offered yeah, he asked if the batteries could be recycled, and yes, we're paid $5 a battery, so yeah, you'd be silly not to. That lead's worth a lot. We're kind of followers of Bill McDonough's cradle-to-cradle concept, and as much as we can, we're making this car something where every single component will be totally recyclable or disposable. But I think the key thing is to keep all of the technical nutrients, things that are necessary and rare, and keep recycling those. You know, so keep stainless with stainless, copper with copper, etc. Yes?
As far as creature comforts go, does it have things like air conditioning?
It has air conditioning, and the air conditioning system and the heat are actually, I think, better than in a regular car because you have a variable speed control. Rather than sitting at idle in a normal car, you have, maybe that's when you have the most heat, the sun's baking down on you and the car is just idling. So with this one, you can crank it up to 8,000 RPMs and really crank while you're idling. It doesn't matter. It's totally independent of what your engine's doing. It's got its own little electric motor, so it's a good system. Yes?
Do you plan a convertible model?
Convertible? Yeah, we plan all these models. I mean, we want to build 150 million cars in 30 years, so yeah, they're going to be everything, you know, but one step at a time. I mean, we can just barely afford to put these out at this price right now. It's a very slow, painstaking process when you don't have tons and tons of capital behind you. So, you know, we just try to do a good job. Yes?
What's the schedule for building affordable cars?
It really depends on investors. I've met with 3 billionaires who all are very interested, but I think that they'd rather see us learn on somebody else's money. I don't know how to explain that, but it's like if you have something that's very capital intensive, and for someone to put out the kind of money that it requires to get a car company up and going, there has to be an awful lot of trust. And so they generally like to invest in companies that are already making a profit. And we're just about there right now. We actually can sell cars profitably. Yes? Okay. Yes?
Is the center of gravity on this significantly lower than a regular car? So
yeah, very, very significantly lower. It's like 12 1/4 inches off the ground. It actually has the same rollover threshold as a 911 Porsche. So you think of a Porsche as wide like this, you tilt it up to about 56 degrees and it balances on 2 wheels. Our car is like this, but you lean it over until the roof's almost on the ground, and that's where it balances on 2 wheels. So it's kind of like a lead go-kart. You go-kart with lead, and then you're sitting on top. All the weight's down low, 2,000 pounds under the floor, and the rest of it spread out throughout the rest of the car. Okay, well, I guess that wraps it up. Thank you.